In Ireland.
Oh, they'd be,
Oh, that's pretty big.
yeah, well,
And then
not
she
all
comes.
of them. There'd be different sizes.
Sure.
But we call them cups. They were more, some of them were flatter. We never picked any near a tree or that. They were, we call them fairy mushrooms. What they extracted from the roots of a tree was not the same as
I see.
but that to me, to this day, is almost a miracle.
Sure.
Because I have walked through the fields at night and there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And I've gone out in the morning
And there they are.
and he's all into the walls. And when you broke them, real pink as any meat that you ever saw. See, when I see them come from the store now, and you have to wash them to begin with. I don't wash them, I peel them and I cook them. And they said, well, you don't. I said, yeah, you do too. Then I look inside and I said, are they really all right? When did you buy them? I said, of course they're all right. Just got them. So much for the basket. So much for the basket. I said, well, no, they have mushroom. There's some mushroom down there. Real pink as me. So that when they talk about things being backward, not miles ahead of you as far as the purity of
Oh, yes, I think that's right.
product was. Everything like that was.
How long did your dad live after that? You said the doctors came and told him he was very
He
sick.
lived to be 80.
And how old was he when that happened, when the doctors were
He
coming?
might be 45, or he wasn't 50 years old.
Oh my, so he lived 20 or 25 years.
They married very young, so no, I don't know what it was. It was, but he was. But as a result, he was very special to us. My mother made it very clear to us that he was precious, and we almost lost him. So, as he grew along, he took care of his farm. The boys did it. What he did was perfection. Like that, he did a certain amount. Was perfect. But in winter time, he slept later in the morning. Weekend, when we were around, the big thing was be sure the door is closed, it isn't draft. Be sure the fire on the hearth is nice.
Sounds like you took care of him very well.
Open fire on the hearth, and that you tended it and had it. And he loved hot bread for breakfast. He wasn't supposed to have it. He had hot bread every morning. So the two youngest of us, the weekend, we made sure that we were around. And he had to have beaten egg whites with a little brandy sugar every morning. So when we went home and we heard my mother beating up this tube, got out from under the covers, and when she emptied the bowl, we finished licking it, and the glass after. But then because it had alcoholic liquor in it, we were supposed to have total abstinence when we got to be 7 years old. So when I got to that, I had to have my little sister overnight, had it all to herself. See, but no, he had that every morning.
How did he treat you? How did he treat you? Was he?
Oh, well, it was okay, but we saw this all the time, that he had that, and every afternoon. See, my mother knew he needed his needs and that, so every afternoon he had a glass of port wine and biscuits. There was plain. If he didn't, he had a little bottle of Guinness stuff. And while none of us touched it, it was there in the press, all those things. And if a neighbor came in, we were supposed to know enough to provide for both of them. No matter how small we were, if we were in the house and the others were out, and it came 4 o'clock, we got my father's glass of wine, obviously. And if a neighboring man was there, he also had the same.
I see.
But that was never any attraction to the thing. Just what grown-up people did. Was all. See, but no, he did. He was always very thin.
Very what?
King.
King.
Tall, slight, built. He was almost feminine looking, you know. He didn't. In fact, the neighbors used to say, one old neighbor used to say, if he wasn't so dressed up, he wouldn't be much to look at. Because my mother was, they didn't wear a collar, you know. He wore a white peak collar with the front, you know, those starched. And he always wore a navy coat and a gray tweed vest and pants. He did look quite nice. We didn't think anything in the street looked like the two of them when they went out. But no, he outlived my mother 10 years or more.
My goodness.
Yes. So now, when I hear people talk,
do you know when he died, roughly?
Huh?
I lost my pencil.
Well,
do you know when he died?
1930. No, somewhere in the 1930s. My mother was 1932.
Oh, there it is.
In 1932. Now, I don't know exactly. He lived a couple of years later.
Your mother died in 1932.
Yes. It was 2 weeks after their golden jubilee.
So that was Delia, right?
Their golden wedding was in February 1932, and she lived 2 weeks after that. But I don't. I looked for it, but it's the 1930s, but just where I don't know exactly.
So it was Thomas. He died in. You said a few years later, so probably the middle of the 1930s. Somewhere.
Yeah, well, sometime like that. But he did. You know, he had really normal health. He went out. He did his farming every so often. If he didn't go.
Okay.
Huh?
It's good to meet you.
Are you going?
Yes, we have to get the children in bed.
We're getting late. The oldest ones in it. Then there was 7 or 8 young ones who had vocations, sisters, and there were priests. Right next to the house next door to it had 2 priests, the oldest and the youngest, or 12 things. One of them was ordained in Rome. On the other side of us, they had a Columban father, and the other side there was 2 or 3 nuns.
Why don't you sit in the rocking chair?
Charity. No, I have to walk around. So in that way, but anyway, they were all asked to write things. Well, I wasn't a bit, because I lived with a college crowd, but I did not go to college. I did my own stunt. So anyway, in the end, to satisfy this little niece who was on the committee, I wrote her what I thought was. But to me, if people don't get a little something out of it, they're reading about deaths, funerals, shootings every day in the week. So give them something a little bit different. So I told them about a few of the little wild things we did in school and how we would have got away with it. And I described the teachers and such like and how much. The one thing I hated sewing above all things because we didn't get any. We had 3 periods a week, but the teacher was just an English and a math woman. She would spend all day on that, and she did. But when it came to the sewing, she did school records. She sat us in front of her, told us to take out our work, and just said if we did not have a thimble, we would please remove ourselves and sit with the boys. And I used to say, like fun. you can't sew without a thimble. I said, yes, I can. But I can't sew without a needle, and I never have when I'm breaking them. So I got a piece of colour thread and I tied it round the head of a pin. And whenever she did raise her eyes and look down to see that we were sewing, I used the pin and the thing. But I wrote that just to give them, see, well, the others could be their obituaries. And there was the picture of this young one. She certainly isn't 40 years old. Today she entered. Today she made her vows. She talked this grave. She taught that grave. She worked in the slums of London with something. Period. And her picture's there as big as life. And I said, well, that's really good. They can keep that and she dies and will do. Instead, a couple of them like that. You know, dry as dust. And I said, okay, I wouldn't waste my time writing that. So I did have calls from the others saying, you know, that they really thought it was funny. And I said, well, it should be. I don't see why we had to. If the school lasted 100 years when no other school in the area lasted anything like that, then it should get.
Tell them how you ended up getting into sewing.
Huh?
Tell them how you ended up
and
sewing.
the funny part of the thing was that
When you went in the convent.
I entered, and because I looked rather fragile in those days, and I was a bit on the elderly side, and I had two sisters already who were cooks down the line, they decided I might go sewing. And so I was told, first day I was there, I was going up to the sister in the sewing room, and I said, that's it, I'll be on the road by this time next week. So the sister in charge of the sewing room happened to be an Irish sister too. She was from Cork. But she was supposed to put on quite a front for the new arrival. So she informed me we would do some cutting out. My God, cutting out, sewing, cutting out. So the next day I appeared and I said, well, that'll be my first and my last. I'm sure of that. So she comes along and she has a big bolt cloth this high and a yardstick. And I was to measure off dish towels. I was to cut this into 36-inch lengths. So no, did she call this? Did she call this sewing? Then the next day she comes back and she had another bolt, and we were going to make roller towels. Another one. And I said, well, I wonder when she's going to start the game. So I had never used a sewing machine. We didn't have one. So then I had to learn the sewing machine. And because the others were in use, I had a real old one. And every time I touched it, it got smoke out of it. You know, it was real old. So I'm puffing away and I said, does she expect that thing is going to work? But we got along famous after that. She was very good. And I graduated to a better machine after a while. And everything connected with white that the sisters had, we made it. So all day. So I told them in the thing that this was God's punishment. We didn't, when this teacher that we had, we survived sitting in front of her and behaved, we got somebody to ask her if we might take our sewing outdoors, if the weather was good. And she said yes. So we got out, and the school had one gable end that had no windows. Beautiful ball alley. So there were benches out there, so we got out, and we put the sewing bags under the benches, and we got a ball. And we played alley ball for 3 quarters of an hour. And then we knew her house was right next door. And we knew that she was going to go out, as I said, to put the kettle on for her tea. And somebody gave the sound, and she had moved. Was moving to go next door. So immediately the ball was left rolling, and we're sitting and the bags are out, and we're sewing.